The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Good afternoon and welcome to Veterans in Politics. This is Christina Ortiz and I am filling in for both the guys today by myself. So we're going to have two guests calling in today. We will have William Horn, Washoe County School District, CG, and Joe Sacco, officer in the Stonewall Democratic Club of Southern Nevada. So we're going to do a quick rant. Just want to let everyone know that early voting in Nevada has started, and whether you're a veteran, young, old, first-time voting, this is a crazy election, so much to be determined. Make sure and get out and vote. Make sure that you use the rights that our veterans have fought for, the rights that so many of us take for granted, and get out and vote. It's a freedom that, you know, a lot of other countries in this world don't have, and we are very fortunate to have it. It is one of the greatest things you can do. So please make sure you get out and vote for all parts of this election. William Horn.
Hi, Christina.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, and how about you?
I'm good. Is it snowing out there in Reno yet?
You know, no, but we had plenty of rain, and actually, I think it was I was up in the mountains up at the lake on Thursday. It just rained really hard up there.
Oh Lord.
So the rain is a good way to start. It'll turn into snow soon enough.
Hopefully, we can keep it in December, till after December when I go out there.
Okay, well, we'll do that. We'll try really hard.
Thanks. So, William Horn, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm running for school board for District G, which is a very, very big district. It covers Lake Tahoe, Washoe Valley, everything west of 395 and 580, as well as Cold Springs, Lemon Valley, Golden Valley, and the Stead area. And I'm running to help our children's education, improve transparent communication with the parents, as well as allowing the teachers to teach. And when I talk about allowing the teachers to teach, we either need to adjust Common Core to meet the needs of the teachers and the parents and the children, or we need to eliminate Common Core. It costs money, and it's standing in the way. And it doesn't mean that I don't believe in standards, but we need to allow people who choose to get into the teaching career that we need to let them teach with their passionate skills and not be continually asked to check off this box or that box. And we also need to have the parents to be able to understand, particularly the Common Core math. It's pretty darn hard for most parents in this day and age to understand it.
What are some ways that you plan on implementing that, and how do you plan on making those changes?
Well, I think the trustees, first I need to work with the other 6 trustees starting in January when I get sworn in. But obviously during the 2017 legislative session, I need to make sure that I work with the school district's lobbyist, Lindsay Anderson. She's a quality lobbyist, knows what she's doing. But I want to make sure that I'm down there with her and challenging the governor as well as the legislature to finally come up with what I call an equitable funding formula for public education. There is a ballot measure, WC1, that is requesting the increase of sales tax to fund $781 million of school construction. The sad part about it is that only addresses one of the challenges that we're facing. Sometime in the next 9 years, we're told that we're going to get 10,000 new students. In other words, we're going to go from 64,000 children to 74,000 children. If the current school board and school district continues to spend at the rate they're spending, that's an extra $77 million annually to educate our children. And I have been challenged finding where that money is going to come from. And I think it only can come from Carson City and the governor and the legislators having the courage to finally address public education, and then turning the money over to a school district and the trustees who won't waste public funds so that that money can be spent. But even if the $77 million could be cut by 10%, it's still $60 million of additional money that just isn't in the budget. It isn't there today, and I don't know how it's going to come in the future if we don't do something about it.
So I guess something else, that will be on the legislator is ESAs. What do you think about ESAs? Could this help the alleviation of those increase of students by a little bit?
I don't think it's going to eliminate overcrowding, and all of that money to fund it is taken away from the school district. But the ESS, what those tell me is it's parents and even teachers who are disappointed in the way our children are being educated in the public schools. And it should be a message to the elected officials as well as the superintendents and everybody that works at a school district, particularly those in Washoe School District, that parents and teachers are dissatisfied with the education our children are receiving. As a former businessman, I understand what it means to meet my customers' needs, and when they choose to go buy from somebody else, that sends a message that my customer service is inadequate or my product isn't good. And right now, there are a lot of people in Reno and Sparks and the Lake and Washoe Valley that are questioning the product as well as the customer service that our children and parents and even the teachers are receiving on a daily basis from the elected officials as well as the leadership of the district. It needs to change.
So.
And Mr. Horn, how you doing? I apologize.
That's okay.
You know how traffic is.
Well, having lived in Sacramento quite a few years ago, I don't like to go to Sacramento anymore because the traffic is terrible. So,
had you had an opportunity to give your bio?
Nope. Would you like to hear that?
Yeah, I'd love to hear your bio.
Okay. Well, the one that I'm most proud of is for 50-plus years I have been an education volunteer and an advocate. Particularly for 27 years right here in Reno, Nevada, I have been serving in the schools in a variety of different positions. I've got 36 years as the CEO or the Chief Operating Officer or owner of 7 different businesses, all the way from the documentation business to the ag business to the car business to just a variety of different businesses. And then when I decided I didn't want to travel anymore, I applied for a position up at Incline Village, Crystal Bay, to be the Chief Executive Officer, General Manager for a small $70 million local government. And during that 13-plus years that I was there, was faced with some of the same things that our school district is challenged with today, and that's buildings that were worn out and deferred maintenance. And over a 13-year period, we renovated, tore down, built new buildings, got maintenance up and running to the tune of well in excess of $120 million, and did it on time and on budget. One of the things that I was told when I started my career in government was that local governments don't do things on time or on budget.
Do you get a bonus? Well, do you get a bonus for that, Mr. Horn, if you do things on time and under budget?
Customer service is improved, but typically no bonus.
Okay.
Although my contract had a bonus feature in it for making budgets come in on time, as well as on budget. But bottom line is we were probably the most sustainable local government in the entire state of Nevada.
So what I'm saying, you got an incentive to do that. Do you think?
Yes, there was an incentive, but I wasn't the only one that received an incentive. We had management by objectives, and those incentives went all the way down to every employee that participated.
Do you think if government do you think if government workers get some type of incentive, do you think that they might do a better job or no?
I think you need to be careful when you combine what businesses do with the public sector.
Gotcha.
And you just need to make sure that it's balanced out correctly. But I think any time that you come up with some type of incentive, whether it's a promotion, whether it's extended education, career development, or just plain at the end of the year, a bonus for achieving expectations above and beyond, not just making it, but I'm talking about exceeding it by 10 or 20%. Yes, but I don't know just how easily that would be with teachers. We have almost 3,900 teachers in the school district here in Reno and Sparks, and coming up with an evaluation process that in many ways they don't control. And whether Common Core is good, bad, or indifferent, I'm told by most people that it's not good. But if you're told how to teach people and then you're going to be evaluating on that, if the way you're told how to teach you have no control over, then it's pretty darn hard to evaluate your progress and your success.
Well, is the reason why we have Common Core in the state is because of the federal mandates about dollars being sent to the state if they didn't participate, or dollars being taken away if they didn't participate in the Common Core practice?
Well, I understand that we were late as Washoe County School District. Although we switched to the Common Core, we were late in getting any grants. But here's the danger of grants.
How many dollars are we talking about when you mention grants?
Oh, boy.
Just ballpark. Mr.
Probably more than $100 million.
Oh, wow.
It's really difficult when you go on to the district's data gallery to see exactly things. But the danger of grants, particularly from the federal government, is they typically come with a requirement to hire an administrator. They typically come with a checklist. But the worst part about it, and I was at a meeting yesterday where 38% of the state of Nevada's budget comes from grants.
Right.
And typically when grants go away, the mandates stay. And that's the danger. When they stay, how do you fund them when the grant's gone? And they put control of whether it's the state of Nevada or whether it's Reno or whether it's Carson City. It puts it in the control of somebody that's 3,000 miles away from our community. Congressman Amodei put it best about 4 or 5 weeks ago in a meeting. Someone said, what is the federal government going to do for education? And what he said is that there's only 6 of us back in Washington, D.C. that care anything about the state of Nevada. The answers are down in Carson City. So the governor, the legislature in 2017 needs to have the courage to ignore the lobbyists that have agendas and start doing what's right for the children, the parents, and the teachers. Yes?
Do you think there does need to be some kind of evaluation, and what would that process look like?
Well, I talked to one teacher just about 2 hours ago as I was walking one of the precincts. And this teacher basically said the evaluation process is almost impossible simply because the teachers are told how to teach. They are not allowed to use the latest standards, the latest things that they find out. And then I said, how many of the teachers do you think are surprised at their annual evaluation? And this person said, most everybody is surprised. Nobody who is an employee should ever be surprised about their evaluation. There should be no surprises at the end of an evaluation period. We need to be able to do it. But if you're not in control of how you teach, then how can you be evaluated? So it needs to change. And I will tell you, I am not an education expert, but I do know how to hold people accountable. I know how to hold my fellow trustees, there will be 6 of them, accountable. I know how to hold the superintendent accountable.
Well, explain. How would you do that?
Well, there is a strategic plan. What's been going on? I've been going to almost every board meeting since 2014 when the school district, the trustees illegally tried to fire the superintendent, ultimately did spend $1 million of the general fund doing that. At the beginning of every trustee meeting, all we hear about for anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, and this is after public comments over, but once public comments over, then we hear the 7 trustees and we hear the superintendent and I'll call it a brag session about what I did over the last 2 weeks. Well, what I want to hear right after public comment is I want the superintendent, I want her report, and I want her to tell the progress that we're making. Every mom and dad can find out exactly where their children are in school by going online. At the end of every week, they can find exactly how they're doing. I want to hear from the superintendent tell us how that's going. I don't want to hear about the latest photo op. I don't want to hear about the latest conference. I don't want to hear about the latest award. I want to hear, not once a year, that our graduation rate is 76%, which I don't think is a measurement of success. I don't want to hear about ACT scores through the newspaper once a week. Or once a year. I want to hear on every other meeting. We have 2 meetings a month. I want to hear each meeting how we're making toward what progress we're making towards the various metric and measurements that we have. That's how you hold people accountable. You don't hold them accountable once a year during their evaluation. You hold them accountable, particularly when we're talking about 64,000 children, and we're talking about the scores that we have been getting. And it's the scores, it's difficult because everybody in the state of Nevada is required to take the ACT, whether they're going to go to college or not. If that is a good measurement, then let's stop making excuses for why our percentages are so low. Let's figure out a way to reconcile why we continue to do that. But I think anybody that is getting a B or below that's reported to the parents each and every week, I think those things need to be addressed, not individually, but what's wrong?
Well, then I asked, here's the statement. In Nevada are over-tested. I tend to agree with that statement. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm told by every teacher that I talk to and every parent that I talk to that that's absolutely what takes place. Too much testing, and there's thousands and thousands of dollars that are required for that. Certainly we need to have a way of measuring a child's success. Not that the way I was educated is the perfect example, or the way that my 7 children were educated is a perfect example, but they weren't tested to the point where hours were taken up each and every week in testing. Let's simplify the test, and every time there's a grant, there's a test required. And there's an acronym for every one of these tests, and they're developed by somebody else. As much as I hate to say that it takes a village or a community to educate or to raise families, we need to do things that are particularly focused on northern Nevada. There's 17 counties, and every one of them has their own issues. And we've got these 2 gigantic counties, Clark and Washoe, that are far different than a county that's only got 1,000 children going to school. There is too much testing, to answer your question. It needs to be simplified.
I absolutely agree. And what about those children who maybe are extremely bright but just don't test well, those children who learn from different methods? How do we address those children and say that they're succeeding even though it may not show on an A, B, C type of deal?
Well, personally, I happen to be one of those people that apparently didn't test very well, because I remember taking a test when I was in high school, and it was what kind of a test, what you're going to be when you grow up. And the results came back. He's going to be a great person because he can be successful as a garbage man. Well, I went on to graduate from a university. I went on to become a certified public accountant in the state of California. I went on to graduate at the top of my class in the MBA program at Golden Gate University. And I just started learning how to take tests, but I started to learn how to do things different at a later stage. Again, I said I wasn't an education expert, but there are plenty of people that we can talk to that have figured out how to motivate a child that takes tests poorly or is developing slowly. I couldn't read until I was 12 years old. And I had a teacher who said, I'm not going to let you go to 7th grade unless you learn how to read. And you know what that teacher did? 5 days a week for an hour after school each day for 7 months, he worked with me. That's not allowed anymore. That's not allowed anymore. If a teacher wants to tutor a child, they need to be paid to tutor a child. Robert Thompson in Sacramento, California did it for free for 7 months because he cared. He was a dedicated teacher.
You mentioned earlier that 38% of the budget comes from grants. What about the other 62%?
Well, obviously, it's sales tax and it's property tax and it's just a variety of fees that are collected for all kinds of different services, whether it's DMV fees, a variety of fees. But I listened to a presentation by our state controller yesterday, and I had no idea that 38% of today's budget, and that's doubled over the last 11 years. And so we're reaching out, and most of it's coming from federal governments, but every grant has a tie-in. And what do you want to call it? You've got to answer these 10 questions. You've got to have a special audit. Up at Incline Village in Crystal Bay, we got federal funds because we were considered rural. And every time we got a federal grant, and it was interesting because as much as many people don't want that, at the same time, when I was the CEO up there, I was held accountable to make sure that I was reaching out to Washington, D.C. constantly and making sure that Incline Village and Crystal Bay got its fair share. But we spent extra money on the audits to simply comply with the grant. And I understand why you need to be held accountable for federal money or state money or money from a charity. But should you have to hire an extra administrator just to monitor a couple of $1 million grant? And the worst part is these grants come and go. Yeah. Then the expectations or even the mandates stay, and the money goes away.
Right.
The city of Reno's been challenged with that, with firefighters, and I've seen it a multitude of times. But it's a scary number. But the thing that scared me most about the presentation is when the grant goes away, the mandate stays. And that jumped off this report and just caught me. Maybe I should have known it, but it caught me off guard. It was like, oh no. Because the school district is faced with the same issues to a smaller degree.
Right. Well, Mr. Grant, we'd like to thank you for coming on the program, and
okay.
And we'd like to congratulate you on receiving the endorsement of Veterans in Politics.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I would like you to let the listeners know, 30 seconds or less, why they should go ahead and elect you to be the next Washoe County School Board trustee for seat number G, or letter G, and
right.
And your bio, please.
Okay. Well, a vote for me is a vote for children, their parents, and allowing the teachers to teach. I come with 50 years as an education volunteer and advocate, 36-year business leader and owner, and 13 years as a public official where there were no open meeting law violations the entire time. And the school board can't say the same. So think of our children, think of our parents, and think of our teachers, and mark Bill Horn.
And Mr. Horn, is there a point of contact for you?
Yes. You can go to hornforschoolboard.com is my webpage, or you can call me directly at 775-742-4210.
Well, William Horn, thank you so much for coming on the program. Folks, that's William Bill Horn, candidate for Washoe County School Board, seat letter G, and we would advise all the Veterans in Politics members in Northern Nevada, especially in the Washoe County area, to vote for William Horn and put him in office as your next Washoe School Board letter G trustee. This is Steve Sanson, Christina Ortiz with Veterans in Politics. Folks, but don't go away. We have Joe Sacco, who I just found out a former officer of the Stonewall Democratic Club of Southern Nevada. We'll be back.
Hi, this is Annette Levy. Corruption destroys communities. Did you know Nevada was rated the 5th most corrupt state in the nation? I want to change that. I'm running for District Court Judge in Department 20. Let's work together to raise the bar in Nevada. Call me at 702-499-7278 or look me up on my website, electanet.com. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Heidi Hanusa, and I'm a marriage and family therapist. My clients consist of families, children, couples, and individuals that are in need of some assistance dealing with trauma, depression, anxiety, and many other life issues that you can find on my website. I accept most insurances. For additional information, such as location, hours, insurances, and experience, go to my website at Faith Individual and Family Counseling.
Folks, we are back. This is Steve Sanson, Christina Ortiz with Veterans in Politics. We have Joe Sacco, who's the former officer in the Stonewall Democrat Club of Southern Nevada. Mr. Sacco, how you doing today, sir?
Hey, good, Steve. Thanks for having me on the show. I really do appreciate it.
You know, I wanted you right next to me so, you know, we could hold hands and stuff, but what happened?
Well, I'd be happy to do that next time around. I got called out on some business. I'm actually in Colorado for the weekend. A little bit of pleasure, a little bit of business.
All right,
but
well,
as soon as I'm back, I'm happy to do the show again with you.
All right, tell us about you, Mr. Sacco.
Well, like many others, I've been known as a community activist. I've done a lot of work with the homeless, as you already know, with veterans, and I've worked with kids. And I really have a lot of interests in the community, spanning from everything under the sun, getting corporations a little bit more under control, strengthening education in Nevada. I've been involved a lot on the streets, you know, in a lot of protest activities and trying to bring awareness to the community on things that are troubling us in Southern Nevada.
What do you think your biggest issue in Southern Nevada is, the most troubling issue?
Well, I think that the corruption in our major political parties is driving a lot of the problems from being solved, frankly. We've got two parties, you know, we're told time and time again they're the only two parties that matter. And take for one example this stadium deal. Democrats and Republicans alike seem to have been influenced by their connections with the big casino moguls, and they've received a lot of monies from these casinos, and you know, frankly, they side with the casinos on everything. So the community suffers, the grassroots suffers. We don't get the support that we need in the community.
Mr. Sacco, I remember seeing you on national TV about some incident dealing with the DNC here locally, and chair throwing accusation by a clown journalist is what I call him. What happened with that whole Bernie Sanders Hillary Clinton deal? Could you explain?
Well, okay. Let's start from the broad view, and then we'll get a little bit more specific. In general, what we've seen through this entire election cycle is the DNC and the Democratic Party working side by side with the Hillary Clinton campaign, with the Victory Fund, and with the Nevada operatives that have been side by side, lockstep with Hillary Clinton for many, many decades. So we've seen, being a former Bernie Sanders national delegate and volunteer for his campaign, which was truly grassroots, truly a populist movement, regardless of which side of the political divide you sit on. He was really moving and shaking and talking about the issues. Now, through this election cycle, myself and others seen one bit of corruption after the next after the next. I'll give you one example. This young man came into town from Ohio, I believe. He was working for the Hillary Clinton campaign, and at the very same time, he was working with the Nevada Dems. So right then and there, you know, that's just one little example. But so many more people were involved, and the way I see it is the NV Dems have been infiltrated by the corporate Dems, the elite, the most elite part of the Democratic Party, out of Washington, D.C. So getting a little bit more specific about the corruption that we experienced in Nevada, you brought up the Clark County Convention earlier in the year when it got quite heated when the chair of the NV Dems, Roberta Lang, had determined that we're not going to operate this meeting under Robert's Rules of Order, which is the way that all political meetings are governed to keep order, to uphold the democracy that some of us respect and value. So when Roberta Lang decided that the rules are out the window, she can do whatever she wants, she can rule however she wants, and her ruling on every issue under the sun is final and undisputable, unquestionable. That is when the Bernie Sanders supporters, delegates to that convention, were very, very upset right from the get-go, before the convention even started. So you mentioned a reporter that we have an equal disgust for, John Ralston. And what I tell people about John is, look, he used to be a good voice for the community. I had a lot of respect for the guy. I've even been on his show a number of times years back when I ran for city council. And what I've seen over the last few years is his ethics have completely gone out the window. There's no journalistic ethics with John Ralston, no matter what station he moves to. In fact, he's been losing his jobs left and right because people are not having it anymore. Like Bernie Sanders has always said, enough is enough. So this guy, along with a couple of other insiders, if you will, decided with the DNC, with the Hillary Clinton campaign, that they have to shut it down. You know, if you look at the WikiLeaks report, which are leaks, not hacks, I want people to get that through the head. These are leaks. These are emails that are real and undisputable, and these emails show that this corruption was happening. They were talking about it. They've got to shut down this guy, Bernie Sanders, this man of the people. This movement is over. It's ending in Nevada. That was decided in Washington, D.C. So John Ralston, along with another gentleman, Andrew Davey with Let's Talk Nevada, who may have been, to the best of my knowledge, the first person to misreport on this. They got the story going, chairs were thrown. So I was there at that meeting, and what I experienced, what I saw and heard with my own eyes and ears, was the meeting got shut down in a moment's notice because Roberta Lang did not want there to be a division of the House. We were going to count the delegates. It appeared as though Bernie Sanders was going to win Nevada. Now, we're talking about the state convention. Let me just correct myself. I had mentioned that it was a county. It was actually the state convention. So I saw a gentleman pick up a chair over his head. I mean, it looked like he had blood in his eyes. He was enraged. And a lot of people were enraged. But let's be clear, we were enraged because the party told the people, we're not following our own rules, and in doing so, we're going to show our blatant disregard for democracy and our bias towards our candidate, which happened to be Hillary Clinton this time.
So, Mr. Sacco, you know, I agree with you on a lot of what you said. I thought that the Bernie Sanders folks did not get a fair shot to voice their opinions and to cast their vote. My question is, how do we, going forward, fix the corruption? What are your ideas about fixing the corruption that you see in Southern Nevada, in the Democratic Party in Southern Nevada?
Well, until recently, I was really holding on, staying in the Democratic Party. However, I experienced some violence at a state central committee meeting when I attempted to speak at the wrong time during the meeting. However, long story short, I've left the party. I'm nonpartisan. My belief and hope for the future is that nonpartisan people, the 40-something% of America that does not have any loyalty to the Team Red or the Team Blue, the Dems or the Republicans, that 40-something% of us, including Green Party members and as well libertarians, we have to come together at the grassroots and we need to start putting ourselves out there and making it so that the Americans at large understand that we have more choices than one or two. In fact, someone that I respect greatly, the great intellectualist Noam Chomsky, he's recently gone on the record saying, look, this is controlled opposition. Hillary Clinton wanted Donald Trump in the race because he is what he is, and he tells it like it is according to him. You know, but they wanted this absurd candidate so that the fix would be in for Hillary Clinton. So what I see for the future, my hope is that we come together on both sides of the divide and on the issues that we agree on, and move forward and strengthen those organizations. We should have an election in 4 years where there's 3, if not 4, viable parties that we're hearing from on a national level. Now, we've got a lot of work to do. It's definitely no easy feat.
Well, you know, three questions come to mind. One question is, so you mentioned that you were holding on to the Democratic Party for some time now, and what does that mean? Did you change parties, or?
Well, I've been a Democrat for some time. I got really invigorated when Bernie came out as a Democratic candidate. Mm-hmm. I'm fully behind every shred of his platform, of his values. So I stayed with the Democratic Party for a long time, and through this election cycle with Bernie. I also bought into this idea that we could change things from within. Right. But what I found is that even as the Bernie contingent, myself and others have been sitting down with the Envy Dems, the folks at the top of the party in Nevada. We've made arrangements and understandings, and they have backed out of all their agreements. We had Congressman Ellison come out to Nevada. We requested him to come out back in Philadelphia at the DNC. He did come out. He facilitated a meeting.
Is that the congressman of Minnesota?
Yes.
The
yes,
one,
he was a big supporter of Bernie.
The one that did his swearing in as congressman on the Koran.
Well, I can't speak to that, Steve. I frankly don't know that much about Congressman Ellison, and really, the story isn't so much about Ellison. It's the result of that meeting. Okay. What we determined with the Envy Dems, what we agreed to, was that how we had 42%, even with all the cheating from the establishment, Bernie walked away from the state convention with 42% of the delegates. Okay? So when we get to filling the seats at the State Central Committee, which is the governing body of the party in Nevada, you know how many Bernie delegates made it onto those roles?
How many?
Well, it was about 10 to 20%. So somehow we lost more than half, if not 2/3 of our delegates between the state convention and the assignment of new members to the committee. So how did that happen? We asked them. Chris Miller, the chair of the Clark County Democratic Party, admitted that he filled those seats through a quote-unquote random process. We asked him. We had Dr. Pelton, who's a retired social work professor and statistician from UNLV. He said it's virtually impossible that a random selection process would cut a 42% delegation down to 10 to 20%. And Chris Miller's response was, well, he just looked at the names, and every 2 or 3 or 4 names, he just pointed his finger on the paper and selected those names. So you can connect the dots and see that every step of the way, the party is disrespecting democracy, disrespecting the process, their own rules, and some believe laws of Nevada. And so I'm feeling like my back is against the wall and that there's nowhere to go within the Democratic Party. So I'm happy and relieved to be nonpartisan now, and I look forward to working to people with all different ideologies and backgrounds to find a common ground and make it so that one day these quote-unquote third parties can have a voice in America.
So, Joe, I'm going to make a blanket statement and an assumption. I'm going to assume that me and you are going to be in the same generation. My statement, my question is, does our generation then have the responsibility to go out and do more?
Well, absolutely. Look, we hear the word entitlement thrown around in the news media, and I see it more so, and I hear it more so in the corporate mainstream media, and I believe it's a way that the establishment wants to divide people. In other words, blanket stereotypes about millennials or Gen X, Gen Y. I'm just a little bit older than the millennial grouping, but I can definitely relate to young people as well as older folks. I've got an 83-year-old uncle. God bless him. He's suffering with liver cancer, and thank God that he's got some health coverage for that. But I also have a lot of young friends, and I understand the pressures people are feeling coming out of college with a ton of debt and not having the jobs that they believed were around when they started their education. So to answer your question, yes, everybody has to do something. We live in a culture, if you're a Christian, Jesus Christ may be that figure. If you're into comics, Superman might be that figure. But we have this broken down individuality and individual sense of responsibility when we're always waiting for a hero to emerge from the people. I've seen this with myself. I've seen this with my mother, who's done a ton to help the homeless in Nevada. When she was at the height of her activism and quote-unquote notoriety, people would go to her, "What do we do, Gail? What do we do to fix this? How can you do it? We will follow you." We can't follow the leader. We have to be the leader. And Bernie put this out in his messaging. We have to be the revolution. He may have lit the match, but we need to keep the fire going. And I think that we can be successful when we do cross political lines and come to some common sense values for Nevada and for our nation.
Joe, you mentioned about the Clark County Central Committee for the Democrat Party, and I remember there was this video on Facebook, and you were on the ground. Apparently, you were in pain, and there was Chris Hypock was was saying something that probably was a little bit untasteful to you. You want to explain that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not proud of that day. It's not something that I'm certainly not glad that it happened. Nobody ever wants to be the victim or to be victimized by bullying or straight up violence. What had happened, that was the State Central Committee, and I went to the mic. I was trying to clarify on a certain issue that the chairwoman, Roberta Lang, was once again lying through her teeth.
And what was that issue?
Well, she was telling the Democratic membership that the reason why this Congressman Ellison was coming to Nevada to have a meeting with us later that day was because of her connections with Washington, D.C., and because of her leadership. And it was quite disgusting. And I was sitting in my chair at the back of the room, and, people were kind of murmuring, like, how dare she do this, misrepresent the truth. And, quite frankly, I knew that it probably wasn't the time during the meeting to address this, but I wanted to address it right there in the moment and clarify the truth. So I went to the mic and I waited, and the congressman gave a nice little speech. He stepped away from the mic, and I started to address the chairwoman. Now, she didn't ask me to hold my comments to another time in the meeting. She did not suspend the rules to hear what I wanted to say, which a lot of people said, that might have been, a de-escalating way to hear what a person wants to say. But frankly, Roberta Lang and the party is so afraid of dissenting voices like myself and others. They don't even know what we're going to say, and they want to shut us down, stop our freedom of speech before we even open our mouth. So
I just want to clarify with you. There at no point were you told to not speak?
In one way or the other, I was being shouted down from the microphone, but it was very aggressive and very fast. So it was very difficult to know exactly what the chair wanted me to do. The room kind of erupted right away because some people, wanted to hear what I wanted to say, even though it wasn't the right time, and others just wanted to shut me down and, sit down and shut up kind of attitude. So I don't want to misrepresent the truth. There are videos, and I encourage people, if they want to get to the bottom of it, to have a look and decide for themselves. But I did want to get to the point, a question that Steve asked about the president of the Stonewall Democratic Club, Chris Hypock, here in Southern Nevada. He was at that meeting. He was on his own camera, on his own phone, making a video of the chaos after I was grabbed by the neck by who I was told was the chair of the Lions, the Democratic Club of Lyons County. This gentleman grabbed me by the collar, essentially grabbing my tie in the process, and yanked me to the floor, dragging me like 5 or 6 feet along the floor in an attempt to remove me from the building. Now, before he had even put his hands on me, I was already sitting down on the floor, crisscross, because I wanted people to know that I'm not violent, that I'm not trying to aggravate or escalate the situation, that I was just sitting down in silent protest of not being able to be heard. So after being grabbed, fast forward to Chris Hypock making his little video, and while I'm on the floor screaming and completely in shock, I hear, on this video, you can hear the president of Stonewall say, and I'll edit this for the show.
You don't have to
edit it.
Oh, excellent. Okay, freedom of speech all the way. He said, and I quote, "Don't be a baby, motherfucker." And I don't even like repeating it because it's so nasty. It encompasses everything that the LGBTQ community rails against. When we talk about bullying and transgender kids committing suicide because of the out-of-control bullying that we have in our public schools and throughout society, and this guy who has the nerve to pretend to represent that community and fight against that is bullying me and recording it and promoting it on his Facebook page. And this is a guy who ran for governor in the state of Nevada with zero political experience. This is a guy who, while I was of the club, disrespected me behind closed doors and did not allow me to properly conduct business and my duties as treasurer. So I'll tell you what, after I saw this video, I said, you know what, I can't be a part of an organization that is led by a bully, behind closed doors and now in public view. So that was yet another, nail in the coffin for me with the Democratic Club in Nevada, with the party in Nevada, that is.
Joe, I just want to summarize for our listeners because I think what you went through is horrendous. You were non-violently sitting on the floor, you were minding your own business, and you were dragged.
Yes.
Mr. Sacco, I got a couple of things because
Sure.
we're running out of time. Number one, who are you voting for president of the United States?
Well, I cast my early vote in Nevada the other day. For president, I said none of these candidates. For the Senate race, I also said none of these candidates. And I do want to just point out a couple of folks that I did support, and I believe that your show and your organization is behind them as well. And that is, well, I support Owen Carver. He's not in my district. I voted for Ruben De Silva, a nonpartisan for District 1. I believe it's time that we get the major parties to step aside and give us more of a voice. And I also supported very strongly for Judge Annette Levy.
Oh,
and,
very good.
And I also like Sean Little. So I personally interview the people that I'm going to vote for. If I don't know enough about a race, then I either don't vote in it or I vote none of the above. And I think that's the responsible thing to do.
Well, for those folks that you did vote for, could you, push it out on social media so other folks might decide to vote for them as well?
Absolutely, and I did that today, and I will be doing it more between now and Election Day. Absolutely.
Okay. And in 15 seconds, Mr. Sacco, could you tell the listeners very briefly why they should participate in our election process?
Okay. Well, we need people to be active. We need people to be educated on how they vote and be involved in the community. We can't follow leaders. We can't only want to follow quote-unquote heroes. We have to step up to the plate and be those heroes. We have to do our homework, cast our votes, and also stay involved in between every election. If we don't do it, nobody else is, and if we don't do it, we can't really complain.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sacco. Folks, that's Joe Sacco, who's a former officer of the Stonewall Democratic Club, now nonpartisan, which I'm sure he's going to be a activist in our community. And no matter what your party affiliation is, he's going to make sure your voice be heard. Is that sums it up for you, Mr. Sacco?
I would say so. That's wonderful words there, Steve. Again, thank you for having me on the show. I support veterans in politics, and I'm always here to help out in whatever way that I can. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sacco, and safe travels back to Vegas. This is Steve Sanson, Christina Ortiz with Veterans in Politics. Until next week.